It's your open source advocate, and I'm back with another video. I wanted to talk this week, because spring is just around the corner, about something really interesting that I found a couple of years ago. So I bought a house a couple of years ago. I moved down to the border of Mexico and Texas, US, and it's warm here pretty much year round. So just to give you an example, last week we had days where the high was in the 50s. But then over the weekend, we had days where we almost hit 90, and tomorrow we'll be back at a high in the 50s. So it fluctuates quite a bit, but it doesn't get down in the negative, numbers, and it doesn't get down to like 0 or minus, any kind of number on the Fahrenheit scale, especially. At any regular interval, anyways. We've probably only had a few days, maybe 3 or 4 days this year, where it's been below freezing here. So. Really, the yard is something pretty big here, and I like to have a nice green yard and keep it, looking good. We're in a desert area, but we have a really large man-made lake here, so it creates a massive amount of humidity. But because of the position of the lake and the position of some large hills over on the Mexico side of the border, a lot of weather tends to go around us. We get a lot of rain in the county where I live, but not so much in the city where I live. So it tends to be a little bit dry, so I do have to water my yard. And when I moved into the house, I had a sprinkler system. So the first house I bought up in Lubbock, Texas, which is also pretty desertous kind of area, had a sprinkler system. And the control module on the wall was, to say the least, painful to use. It wasn't impossible. I was able to read the instructions and get it set up to have a timer, and it had 6 zones on it. And I could get those zones to run the way that I wanted them to on the days and things like that. But it wasn't something just intuitive. I could not have possibly walked over to this controller and programmed it, not having the instructions sitting there and not referring to the instructions every time I wanted to go make a change for the 7 years that I lived in that house. When I bought this house, it had a sprinkler system, and I went to look at the controller on the wall, and lo and behold, it's a different controller type. And again, it was a pain to understand, and I really, even with the instructions that were left by the previous owner, I couldn't figure out exactly how to get things to work right. My wife and I both messed with it, and we were, we felt lucky when we got it to start, but then we were worried we wouldn't be able to get it to stop. So it's just always been painful, and I feel like I'm fairly intelligent. I'm probably at least average, but these things are just not made, in my opinion, for the average person to really comprehend. So I started looking, and I thought there's got to be something better, and I had a Raspberry Pi laying around, and I thought, maybe there's something out there that I could do with this. So I just started searching, and this is really what came up first, the OpenSprinkler Pi project. So I've got some images of what I have, but I'll kind of describe for you what you're looking at. So here they're stacked, and this is how it ends up whenever you put it together. So if you look at this image, this is the controller board that you're buying from them. This is just a Raspberry Pi that you get. So I have a Model 3 with the wireless card in it. There's your micro SD card. Here's your USB slots. Here's your Ethernet cable. And then here's your pins for your GPIO. And then this is the controller board. And what happens is this pin flips over and goes into these holes. So this all lines up, and then it sits upside down. So when you're looking at it here, that's what you're looking at. This is the upside down Raspberry Pi, and there's the SD card slot right there. And then this controller board gets power, and it powers the Raspberry Pi as well. So you use a 24-volt power supply that plugs into the wall, and it's got 2 little wires that you put into the controller board over here. And then over here you've got some different some plug-ins that this is where your sprinkler zones plug in. So all of your positive wires plug in here, so 1 through 8. And then 2 negative wires here, and then this is an expansion, I believe, and then also a rain moisture detector. I don't have that, so mine isn't hooked up, but you can set it up so it can detect if there's moisture in the ground already and things like that if you have those sensors, and then keep the Pi from running or keep this controller from running. So anyways, this thing says $75 to $91. I don't know why they say that amount that way. I can't remember, but I want to say it was like 79 bucks when I bought it. So you buy this board, they send it to you with the plexiglass and all of the little pieces that you need to put it together, and then you basically kind of have to figure out how it fits together, but it's really not that complicated. I did hand mine off to my wife to put together, but really she did it, and it was great. She's a little bit more putting things together minded than I am, I guess you'd say. I can take things apart like a champ, but she has to put it back together for me. So This is a cool project, and I kind of want to show you what it looks like. So I've got footage from my phone, and then so using it on the phone, and then also the actual sprinklers going on and off while I'm using it on the phone. And then I've got the controller set up here, so you can log into this through a web portal. Basically, is what happens. So before we get to the usage, I just want to go through the install. It's actually really simple. So what you do is you get a Raspberry Pi, and you basically set up the SD card to run Raspbian, or you can run Raspbian Lite. I believe on this one I just set it up with Raspbian, straight up normal Raspbian Linux. So it does have a UI if I go plug into the Raspberry Pi, but it's out in the garage, so I never do that. And really you don't need to, it's all web-based anyways. So Raspbian Lite would work just fine. You want to make sure when you install Raspbian Lite though that you set up the SSH file, the ssh.txt, and I've done this before on another video, so I'll link that in the description. And then also you want to set up your wpa-supplicant.conf so you can get on your wireless, unless you're going to run an Ethernet cable out to your Pi in the garage or wherever your sprinkler controller is going to be. But other than that, once you've got it set up and you can log into it remotely, you're good. So the Raspberry Pi, once it's installed and you can boot up and log in, you're kind of set. So I'm going to go back one directory here, and I'll show you what's going on. So this is the folder that you'll end up getting, and the way you get this is you run this command that's basically git clone, and I've got it here in some notes. Let me grab it. So I'm going to paste in this command right here, and this is the command. Let me expand this just a little so it'll all be on one line. So it's git clone, and then this is the repo that's out there on GitHub, so you can actually go look at the repo now if you want to. And once you run this command, it pulls down that folder that I just showed you. So I'm just going to Control-C so that I don't run that command, and I'll ls it again. And then, so once you get that pulled down, you'll have this folder there. You won't have this one, but you'll have this. And then you just cd into that folder. And if you just ls it again, you can see there's quite a few files in here, but the important one is this build.sh right here. So once you've got this pulled down, you don't have to do anything special. You cd into the folder, and then you're going to do sudo /build.sh and then ospi. That's it. You don't have to do anything else. And when you run that command, it's going to build this web server that starts running that you see here in the background, and it's going to start it up, and it'll give you a little success message, and it only does a few lines of code, and then it tells you success, and it should be running. It's that simple. It really just isn't that hard to get this going. So it's run git, change into the directory that it creates, and then run this command right here to build it, and it starts running here in the background. That's it. You're done. Every time you reboot, it'll start running again. It really doesn't take any effort to get this going. So now that you've got it up and running, the first time you log in, and it gives you a default password which you should change, and we'll go through the settings here, and we'll go through settings here. But the first time you log in, this is always the screen that you see whenever you log in. It's kind of your home screen. So I do have 8 zones. Now if you don't have 8, there's ways that you can go in and disable the zones that don't work, so you don't have to mess with them. But I do have 8 zones in this yard. It's a little bit bigger than the one where I lived before. This always says 100. Just ignore that because I don't have the sensors, so don't sweat it. And then basically my current weather. So it's not picking up my current weather right now. I don't know why, but it was last night. But it's raining, actually. So right now it's raining. So, but I can click on my zone, and here you can see an interface that basically tells me what I want to know, which is really simple. I can run this zone manually by clicking on it, and here's the hours, here's the minutes, and here's the seconds. So I could set this thing to run for 8 seconds or whatever. So if I go down here to zone 8, it's actually right outside my door here. I can turn this on, and I can set it for 15 seconds here. And you can also just type in the space. You don't have to do it the way I just did it. Just type it in. And when I hit submit, my sprinklers outside are going to kick in, and they're going to run for 15 seconds. And you can see here, you may can hear it. I don't know, just depending on if the mic picks that up or not, but it's literally right outside the building I'm in. So zone 8's running, and it gives you a countdown timer, and then when it gets down to 0, all the sprinklers turn off and it goes back down. So if I do zone 1, I can kick it in for, let's just do 20 seconds, and then I'm going to go and start zone 2 at the same time. So if you're running this for minutes or hours, I want you to kind of see what this looks like, and I'll do it for 20 seconds. And you can see it's going to kind of refresh the page here in a second. So that one's running, and this one is stacked. and these aren't running. So as you stack them up, you can kind of see the indicator here that shows you what's happening in that zone. So when those finish, then zone 1 will drop off. I don't really have to do anything. Zone 2 is going to kick in, and it's going to run for 20 seconds, and then it's going to drop off as well. So that's kind of the basic manual operation, which is super simple, because sometimes you just want to go out and you want to run a zone for a little bit, or you want to test something, or you're looking for a place where a sprinkler's broken, or you need to flush out the system while you fix a sprinkler head, things like that. So this is really convenient because you can pop it up on your phone and you see the same exact thing and it's got the same controls. So when we go into settings over here, this is kind of a nice little settings menu here that you get. And there's lots of little things that you can do here, but the main ones are you want to go in here and change your password. So you can import a configuration. So if you have a configuration on another system or you have to rebuild this for some reason, you can export and import the configuration, but basically just set up the configuration is easy enough. There's help and support, there's about, there's localization, so you can change your language. You can log out of the system, and then if you want to tie this to be able to get to it from the World Wide Web out there, which I don't, but you can tie this into the OpenSprinkler.com and create a login that would also basically link back to your system, is what I'm presuming. So you can disable operations, so basically just disable the whole system for the winter, anything like that. You can change your password. This is an important one. You should change the default password. Don't leave the default password. Reboot the OpenSprinkler system, which is sometimes useful. Sometimes you need to jump in and just reboot the system. It's not hard. It just reboots the Raspberry Pi. That's it. And then system diagnostics. So if you're having issues, you can see system diagnostics. So that's kind of your admin menu. Then down here in the bottom right, this is where the magic kind of happens. So you can preview your programs here. So I don't have any programs running, so it's not showing me any programs because all my programs are disabled since it's winter right now. You can view logs. So here we can see logs of when things ran and how long they ran, things like that. So you can see where I've kind of been messing with them while I've been getting ready for this video. So you can change the rain delay. I don't have a rain delay because I don't have rain sensors. You have run once programs. So if I just wanted to run this once, if I wanted to go ahead and set up when I want all my sprinklers to run, they will run in order, and I can just start it and it's going to run one time and then it's done. Now I can save these as run once programs as well, so they won't run every day. I can just go in and say I want to run this specific program once I've set it up, and it's you know, once it runs it's finished, and then I had to go back and manually start it again, but I don't have to start every zone again. I set up the zones inside of the run once program and then tell it to run it. Then you have edit programs. So this is kind of where the big part happens. So if you ever try to use one of those systems that connects to your wall, they're pretty painful and clunky, especially the older ones. So this one, you just expand your program, and if you don't have one, you just add a new program. But in this case, you expand a program, so there's an add button up here if you don't have any. So I'm going to expand my program and kind of walk you through it. It's just a simple form. Give it a name, and then I would enable it, and that would say, hey, I want this thing to start running. This is my program I want to run. So I have several different programs here. No, I don't want to save it. So I have lots of watering. So this is what I do when I'm kind of in a drought season where there's just not much rain happening, and that happens quite a bit here. But there are some seasons where we get more, moderate levels of rain. So I have a couple of other programs that I can also run. So I have 3 different programs set up, and I go in and just enable whichever one makes sense for what it's been doing in the weather for the last month or so. So this is my one where I water quite a bit. So use weather adjustment. So I think this would check that weather that you saw on the first page if it was pulling weather information to try to figure out is it raining. But again, it rains in my county, so it kind of always says it's raining here, but it doesn't actually rain here where I live, so I don't use this. Your start time, pretty basic. I start mine at 4 a.m. because it's the summertime and it's hot all night, all day. It's just hot. 85 degrees is about as low as it gets a lot of times. So I start at 4 a.m. so they don't have as much evaporation. It's cooled off quite a bit by then. And then I do it as a weekly setup. You can also do interval-based setup. I don't really want to do the interval-based, but you can say run this every second day, that kind of thing, or every third day, whatever. I just do it weekly, and I tell it run on which days. So right here you can pick which days you want this to run. Basically, you can expand this, and then you can check which days you want this to run on. It's real simple. And then as you move up, if there's restrictions, like any kind of odd days, even days, that kind of thing. You can set that. I don't have any restrictions, so I don't set it. And then you just click for each zone to set how long you want it to run. So you can see here I've got 20 minutes set, and I've got that set for every zone. But you could run zone 1 for 20 minutes and zone 8 for 10 minutes because they overlap a little bit, and I don't really need both of them to run that whole time. And then I could run the rest of them for 30 minutes. So figure out what works best for you and then set that up. So there's repeating. So you can say, I need this to repeat, in 2 hours. I don't know why you would do it that way, but you can. And then there's fixed. So I don't do any repeating. I'm not worried about that. Once you're done, you hit save. It'll give you a little message that it saved successfully if it did, and you're done. Your program is set and you're ready to go. Just don't forget to enable it. So again, I don't want to save my changes. I have another program set up. It's the same way. I just named it different, and I've got it set for different days. So just 3 days of the week, and this is when it just rains more. I just don't water quite as much. And then my last program is the same way, and I water just a little bit less time. It's still the same days of the week, still 3 days of the week, but I water a little less time. So it just depends on how much rain I'm getting as to how much I think I need to water. But this is it. That's really the system. So there are a few options here that you can edit. I haven't messed with any of these options, but you are welcome to go through and kind of mess with them if you need to. But there's basically system options. So I may have set the date and time, but I think it just pulls it off of the computer. Actually, I don't remember ever going and setting this. So you can enable logging, disable logging. So if you have master stations, you can configure those things. I don't have any master stations. I just have a station. Station handling, again, if you need to set up any kind of stuff about your stations. So in this case, I have 8 stations. It's really 8 zones is what I call them. If you have more than that, the board can be expanded. There's an expansion slot to add more zones, and then you can, of course, go in here and set that up. Weather and sensors. So if you have the moisture sensors, or if you want it to go off of weather, you can come in and kind of set that up so that it's a little bit more sensitive to those things. If you live in the UK where it rains quite a bit, you might want this thing to always be checking the weather and checking the moisture sensors before it tries to water the grass, because maybe you don't need it. I mean, I don't know. I live in the desert. Integration. So they do have if this then that integration. So if you wanted to set up an if this then that kind of thing, you could definitely do that. And then LCD screen. So if you have an LCD screen attached to the Raspberry Pi, here you can control the brightness and settings for the LCD screen. So there's some advanced settings as well. You can set the port to be something different from 8080. I've just left it alone because it's running on my local network. Device ID you can also change. And then ignore password. That seems like a really bad thing to set, but you could set that if you want to. And then special station auto refresh. I don't know what that is, so I wouldn't mess with it myself. So if you need to kind of do the nuclear option and go back to the basics and back to the beginning to start setting everything up again, you can kind of clear everything out here. So you can clear just log data if you feel like the Raspberry Pi is going to get full or something. You can clear out all these things, but overall I've had this thing running for 2 years and I have not had to do any of that kind of maintenance. I think I've probably had to reboot it maybe 3 times in that time, and I occasionally update it. So I do want to go through real quick how you update it. I showed you how to install it. Once you've got it installed, so I'll just get out of this command here and clear. So when you're inside of the folder here, you just do git pull. It'll go out and it'll try to pull updates. It's already up to date. I just updated it the other day, so there's nothing to do. Once you pull those updates, then you just rerun that sudo /build.shospi command, and you're done. So you basically just do git pull, get the updates, rerun the command, and you're finished. Now, as with anything, because you're pulling data off of GitHub, I would highly recommend before you do updates that you back up what's there today. And it's not hard to do that. Let's go back a little bit here, and we'll just do the main directory. So we'll do ls, and you're just going to do cp-r, which is copy recursively, this basically folder, and you're going to call it OpenSprinkler pi_back. And then if I ls, now I've got this folder here, and if I pull everything down from inside my main folder and something gets totally hosed and I can't get into this web interface again, I can go in and remove that and then jump back into just rename this back to the original name and then rebuild it because I know this was working, and then it should come right back up. So a real simple process for you to not screw everything up completely, hopefully. And if nothing else, when you've got a working version like this, you could zip it up or tar it up and SCP it, which, secure copy it over your network to another machine, so you've got it as kind of a backed up version as well, just in case anything happened that wiped out your Pi or something like that. You don't lose all your settings. But do those things anyways for any of your data. That's just smart. That's really it. That's the OpenSprinkler Pi. I just wanted to kind of show you a really cool project that I like and has done really well for me. I hope somebody out there gets something out of it. And if nothing else, it's a really cool project that you might just go out and check out. Okay, I'm going to start my app. And I'm going to select the zone. And then here you can see I can just set up the times. And then once I actually start it, it's going to run for the time that I set. So I'll set 20 seconds here. And there come the sprinklers. And then they'll go back off after the 20 seconds completes. If you enjoyed this, like, subscribe, and I'll have more videos coming soon, and I'll talk to you later.